The blood on Dr. Harrington's hands told Maeve Johnson that something had gone terribly wrong, and when his eyes met hers with that particular shade of pity, she knew her life had just shattered into pieces she would never fully reassemble. She lay on the narrow bed in the back room of his office in Dodge City, Kansas, the summer heat of 1878 making the air thick and suffocating, though perhaps that was just the weight of grief pressing down on her chest. Her husband Thomas had been dead for 3 months now, kicked by a spooked horse outside the livery, and the child she had been carrying was supposed to be her consolation, her reason to keep breathing, her connection to the man she had loved since she was 17 years old. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Johnson," Dr. Harrington said quietly, his voice rough with exhaustion and sorrow. "I did everything I could." Maeve stared at the ceiling, counting the knots in the wooden planks because if she stopped counting, she would have to acknowledge the emptiness inside her where hope used to live. This was the 3rd time. 3 pregnancies, 3 losses, and Thomas was not here to hold her through this one. Her sister Ruth stood in the corner, weeping softly into her handkerchief, but Maeve had no tears left. She felt hollow, scraped clean, a vessel that refused to hold what it was designed to carry. "There is something else I need to tell you," the doctor continued, washing his hands in the basin with movements that seemed too casual for the magnitude of what he was about to say. "The damage this time, it was severe. Maeve, I do not believe you will ever be able to carry a living child to term. Your body simply cannot sustain a pregnancy. I am deeply, deeply sorry." The words hung in the air like gun smoke after a shooting, acrid and impossible to ignore. Maeve turned her face toward the wall, away from Ruth's sympathetic sobs, away from the doctor's pitying gaze, away from the future she had imagined for herself. She was 24 years old, a widow, and now she would never be a mother. What was she supposed to do with the rest of her life? The weeks that followed blurred together in shades of gray. Ruth wanted her to come stay at the farm. She shared with her husband and their 4 children. But Maeve could not bear to be surrounded by the sound of young voices calling for their mother, could not stand to see the easy way Ruth cradled her baby son. Instead, she stayed in the small house on the edge of Dodge City that she had shared with Thomas, taking in sewing and mending to survive, speaking to almost no one, existing rather than living. The summer burned itself out, and autumn arrived with cooler temperatures and golden light that turned the prairie grass into an ocean of amber. Maeve was hanging laundry in her backyard when she heard the commotion from the street. Dodge City was never quiet, situated as it was along the cattle trail, but this noise was different, urgent, and alarmed. She walked around to the front of her house, still holding a damp sheet, and saw a crowd gathering near the general store. "Someone shot the marshal," a man was shouting. "He is bleeding bad." Maeve watched with detached curiosity as several men carried a wounded figure into Dr. Harrington's office. Violence was common enough in a cattle town, though the marshal was usually the one doing the shooting rather than receiving it. She turned to go back to her laundry when she noticed a young boy, no more than 6 or 7, standing alone in the street with tears streaming down his dirty face. "That is my pa," the child said to no one in particular, his voice breaking. "That is my pa they carried in there." Something in Maeve's chest cracked open just a fraction. She set down the sheet and walked over to the boy, kneeling in the dust beside him. "What is your name, Charlie?" he whispered. "Charlie Turner." "Well, Charlie, standing out here in the street is not going to help your father. Why don't you come sit on my porch where you can still see the doctor's office, and I will bring you some water." The boy nodded mutely and followed her. She brought him water and a biscuit left over from breakfast, and they sat together in silence while the town buzzed with speculation and concern. Marshal Robert Turner was well liked, a fair man in an often unfair place, and the general consensus seemed to be that if he died, Dodge City would be considerably worse off. After nearly an hour, a tall man emerged from the doctor's office, his shirt stained with blood that clearly was not his own. He looked around the dispersing crowd with an expression of grim determination until his eyes landed on Charlie. The boy leaped up and ran to him, and the man caught him in an embrace that spoke of deep familiarity. "Your pa is going to be fine," the man said, his voice carrying across the distance to where Maeve still sat on her porch. "The bullet went clean through his shoulder. He will be laid up for a while, but he will recover." "Can I see him?" Charlie asked desperately. "In a bit. The doctor is still working on him. Let him finish up first." The man looked past Charlie to Maeve, and something about his gaze made her feel seen for the first time in months. He walked toward her porch with Charlie still clinging to his hand. "I am Lucas Turner," he said, tipping his hat. "I believe I have you to thank for looking after my nephew." So this was the marshal's brother. Maeve had heard of him. Everyone in Dodge City had. Lucas Turner had a reputation as one of the finest ranch hands in the territory, though he worked as a ranch manager now on a spread about 10 miles outside of town. People said he could break any horse, rope any steer, and shoot straighter than most men could aim. They also said he was quiet, kept to himself, and had never shown interest in settling down despite being, by Maeve's estimation, somewhere in his late 20s. "It was nothing," Maeve said, standing. "The boy needed a place to wait. It was not nothing to him, and it is not nothing to me." Lucas studied her with eyes the color of creek water, gray-green and unexpectedly gentle. "You are the seamstress, are you not? Mrs. Johnson?" "I am." She did not elaborate, did not want to see the pity that always came when people remembered she was a widow who had just lost another baby. "I appreciate your kindness." He seemed to want to say something else but settled for tipping his hat again. "Come on, Charlie. Let us go see if the doctor will let you in now." Maeve watched them walk away, the tall cowboy and the small boy, and felt that crack in her chest widen just slightly. She had not realized how much she missed having someone to care for, even in such a small way. 2 days later, Lucas Turner appeared at her door with a bundle of clothing. "These belong to Charlie and his father," he explained. "Several shirts got torn and bloodied during the shooting, and they both could use some mending. I heard you do good work." Maeve took the bundle, noting the wear on the garments that suggested they had been mended before, carefully and with skill. "Someone has already been taking care of these." "That was me," Lucas admitted, and there was something almost embarrassed in his expression. "My mother taught me before she passed, said every man should know how to take care of his own things. But what I can do and what needs doing are 2 different levels of skill. I will pay you fairly." "I will have them ready in a few days," Maeve said, and hesitated before adding, "How is your brother?" complaining about being stuck in bed, which the doctor says is a good sign. "He will make a full recovery, though it will be some weeks before he can resume his duties." Lucas shifted his weight, and Maeve realized he was nervous. "I am staying in town to look after him and Charlie while he heals. If you need anything at all, I am at the boarding house on Front Street." "Thank you," Maeve said, puzzled by the offer. She needed nothing from anyone. But over the following weeks, Lucas Turner found reasons to stop by. He brought more mending, including items that looked suspiciously like they did not really need repair. He brought vegetables from a garden he claimed to be tending for his brother, though Maeve suspected he was buying them. He brought Charlie, who seemed to delight in sitting on her porch and talking about everything and nothing while she worked, his childish chatter filling the silence that had become her constant companion. "My pa says Uncle Lucas is the best horseman in Kansas," Charlie announced one afternoon in late September, watching Maeve embroider a delicate pattern on a Sunday dress for one of the saloon girls. He says Uncle Lucas could ride a tornado if he had half a mind to try. That sounds dangerous, Maeve observed, amused despite herself. Uncle Lucas says anything worth doing has some danger in it, Charlie continued cheerfully. He also says that being scared is natural, but being a coward is a choice. Your uncle sounds like a wise man. He is lonely, though, Charlie said with the brutal honesty of childhood. I heard my pa tell him he should find himself a wife before he gets too old and set in his ways. Uncle Lucas said he was not interested in any of the women in Dodge City, but I think he likes you. Maeve nearly pricked her finger with the needle. Charlie, that is not an appropriate thing to say. Why not? It is true. He looks at you the way my pa used to look at my ma before she died. The boy's voice went quieter. I was real little when ma passed. I barely remember her. But I remember how pa looked at her. The ache in Maeve's chest intensified. She set down her sewing and looked at Charlie, really looked at him, seeing the loss in his young face that matched her own. I am sorry you lost your mother. I am sorry you lost your husband, Charlie replied with simple directness. And your babies. I heard Mrs. Henderson talking about it at the store. She said it was a terrible tragedy. Maeve should have been angry at the gossip, but instead she felt oddly relieved to have it acknowledged so plainly. It was, she agreed. It is. Uncle Lucas says some things cannot be fixed, only lived through, Charlie offered. He said that after his best friend died in a stampede 2 years ago. He was real sad for a long time, but he got better eventually. Maybe you will get better too. Maybe, Maeve said, though she did not believe it. That evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and red, Lucas came to collect Charlie and stayed for a moment on the porch, his hat in his hands. I hope the boy has not been bothering you, he said. He gets lonesome with his father laid up, and I am not exactly skilled at entertaining children. He is no bother, Maeve assured him. Actually, I have enjoyed his company. Lucas's face transformed when he smiled, the serious lines softening into something approaching joy. He has enjoyed yours as well. He talks about you constantly. Mrs. Johnson showed me a bird's nest. Mrs. Johnson makes the best biscuits. Mrs. Johnson knows everything about sewing. I certainly do not know everything, Maeve protested, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. You know more than I do, and that is enough to impress a 7-year-old boy. Lucas paused, seeming to wrestle with himself before speaking again. Would you consider joining us for supper tomorrow? Nothing fancy, just a meal at the boarding house. Charlie would be delighted, and I would be grateful for adult conversation that does not revolve around cattle prices or card games. Maeve knew she should decline. She was not ready for socializing, was not ready to pretend to be whole when she felt shattered. But the loneliness had been eating at her for months, and the thought of an evening with people who did not look at her with pity was unexpectedly appealing. All right, she heard herself say. What time? The supper was easier than she expected. Charlie chattered throughout the meal, filling any potential awkward silences, while Lucas proved to be a surprisingly good conversationalist when drawn out. He spoke about the ranch he managed, about the challenges of the cattle business, about his hopes to one day own his own spread. He asked about her sewing, about what she had been reading, about her opinions on whether Dodge City would continue to grow or fade away as the cattle trails shifted. He did not ask about Thomas, and he did not ask about the babies, and Maeve was grateful beyond words. As he walked her home through the darkening streets, Lucas said quietly, I know people think I have been making excuses to see you. They are right, I have been. Maeve's heart stuttered. Lucas, I am not ready for I am not asking for anything, he interrupted gently. I just wanted you to know that I enjoy your company. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, I will be here. And if you are never ready, I will still be your friend. You have my word on that." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me?" "Because when I look at you, I see someone who is surviving something that would have broken most people," Lucas said. "I see strength and kindness, and a woman who sat with a frightened child because it was the right thing to do. I see someone worth knowing, worth caring about." "Is that reason enough?" Maeve could not answer, could only nod as tears slipped down her cheeks for the first time since the doctor had told her she would never bear a living child. October arrived with cooler temperatures and news that the men who had shot Marshall Turner had been caught and jailed in another county. Robert Turner was healing well, regaining strength in his injured shoulder, though Dr. Harrington said he would need another month before returning to his duties. Lucas continued to stay in town, managing ranch business remotely and spending his free time with Charlie and, increasingly, with Maeve. They fell into a rhythm that felt natural despite Maeve's initial resistance. Lucas would stop by in the mornings with fresh coffee from the boarding house, claiming he always made too much. They would sit on her porch and talk while she worked, conversations that ranged from the mundane to the profound. He told her about growing up in Missouri, about coming west with his brother after their parents died, about the satisfaction of working with horses and the frustration of dealing with stubborn ranchers who thought they knew better than their hired managers. She told him about learning to sew from her mother, about her marriage to Thomas, about the dreams she had harbored of filling their little house with children and laughter. It hurt to speak about it, but Lucas listened without judgment, without offering useless platitudes, simply bearing witness to her grief. "I feel broken," she confessed one morning in late October as they watched the sun climb over the rooftops. "Like I am not a complete person anymore, just pieces of who I used to be." "You are not broken," Lucas said firmly. "You are wounded. There is a difference. Something broken cannot function. You are functioning every day. You are just doing it while you heal, and that takes tremendous courage." "It does not feel like courage. It feels like I have no other choice." "Courage usually does feel that way." He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Maeve, I want to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. Can you do that?" She nodded, apprehensive. "I am falling in love with you," Lucas said bluntly. "I know the timing is terrible. I know you are still grieving, still healing. I know I should probably keep my mouth shut and wait. But I am 31 years old, and I have never felt this way about anyone. I needed you to know, even if you cannot return it right now, even if you never can. I needed you to know that you are loved, Maeve. You are seen and valued and loved exactly as you are." Maeve's hands trembled in her lap. "I do not know if I can love anyone again," she whispered. "I do not know if I have that left in me." "I am not asking you to love me back," Lucas said. "I am just telling you how I feel. What you do with that information is entirely up to you." He left shortly after, giving her space to process, and Maeve sat on her porch for hours, watching the town go about its business while her world tilted on its axis. She had not thought herself capable of feeling anything beyond grief and emptiness, but Lucas's declaration had sparked something in her chest, a tiny flame of possibility. She was terrified of it. That night, she lay in bed and let herself imagine what it might be like to open her heart again. To laugh without guilt, to plan for a future beyond the next day, to believe that happiness was still possible. The thought felt both impossibly distant and dangerously close. When she saw Lucas the next morning, she said, "I cannot promise you anything, but I would like to try." The joy that lit his face was worth every moment of fear. Their courtship was slow and careful, two wounded people learning to trust again. Lucas never pushed, never demanded more than Maeve was ready to give. They went on walks through the prairie, rode horses to the creek outside of town where the cottonwood trees were turning gold, attended church services together while the town gossips whispered and speculated. Charlie was delighted, convinced he had personally orchestrated their romance and took credit at every opportunity. As November arrived and the air turned crisp, Robert Turner returned to his duties as marshal, though he moved more slowly than before and relied heavily on his deputies. Lucas prepared to return to the ranch, and the thought of him leaving filled Maeve with unexpected panic. "I will be back in town every Sunday," Lucas assured her, sensing her distress. "And you could come visit the ranch. Charlie would love to show you the new foal that was born last week." "It is 10 miles, Maeve protested weakly. 10 miles is nothing on horseback. Maeve, I am not disappearing. I am just going back to work. We will make this work however we need to." She believed him, and that belief felt like its own kind of miracle. The first time he kissed her, it was early December, and snow was falling in soft white flakes that caught in her hair and melted on her warm cheeks. They were standing by the creek where the water ran clear and cold, and Lucas cupped her face in his work-roughened hands with such tenderness that Maeve felt tears spring to her eyes. "I love you," he said again, as if the words were a gift he wanted to keep giving. "I love you, Maeve Johnson." "I love you too," she whispered back, and realized with shock that it was true. Somewhere in the past months, the empty place inside her had begun to fill again, not with what she had lost, but with something new and equally precious. His kiss was gentle, reverent, a question and an answer all at once. When he pulled back, they were both smiling through happy tears. "Marry me," Lucas said. "I know it is fast, I know people will talk, but I do not care. Marry me, Maeve. Let me spend the rest of my life loving you." "Yes," she said, the word emerging without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were wed in January of 1879, on a cold, clear day when the sky was so blue it looked painted. Ruth wept throughout the ceremony, happy tears this time, while Robert and Charlie stood up with Lucas, and half of Dodge City crowded into the church to witness the union. Maeve wore a dress she had sewn herself, simple but beautiful, with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. And when Lucas looked at her as she walked down the aisle, she saw her entire future reflected in his eyes. The ranch house Lucas managed was larger than her little place in town, with space for a garden and a view of the endless prairie that made Maeve's heart expand every time she looked at it. Lucas had already made it comfortable, but Maeve added touches of her own. Curtains she sewed from fabric Lucas bought her, cushions for the wooden chairs, small decorations that turned a house into a home. They were happy. Deeply, profoundly happy, in a way that surprised Maeve every morning when she woke up beside her husband. Lucas was an attentive partner, equally comfortable discussing ranch business or listening to her plans for planting vegetables in the spring. He made her laugh with his dry humor and held her close when the grief still rose up unexpectedly, reminding her that loss and love could coexist. But there was still an absence, a space that neither of them mentioned but both felt acutely. Maeve watched Lucas with Charlie when his nephew visited and saw how natural he was with children, how patient and kind. She knew he would be an extraordinary father, and the knowledge that she could not give him that tore at her in quiet moments. It was late March when the subject finally came up directly. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Lucas said, seemingly out of nowhere, "I have been thinking about orphans." Maeve turned to stare at him. "What? Orphans?" he repeated, meeting her gaze steadily. "Children who need families. There is an orphan train coming through Dodge City next month. I heard about it from the marshal. They bring children from the East, from the cities, and families along the route can adopt them. Maeve's heart began to pound. Lucas, what are you saying? I am saying that if you cannot bear children, then we will build our family another way. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. I want children with you, Maeve, not because I need them, but because I believe we could give them a good life, a loving home. And there are children out there who need exactly that. The doctor said I would never bear a living child, Maeve said slowly, the words still painful even months later. But you are right. That does not mean we cannot have children. Will you think about it? Lucas asked. I do not want to push you into anything, but I wanted you to know that I have been considering it. We could give some child a home, a family. We could love them as our own. Maeve thought about Charlie, about how easily she had come to care for the boy who had needed comfort on a terrible day. She thought about the empty bedrooms in their house, waiting to be filled. She thought about the love she had to give, love that had nowhere to go after losing 3 babies who would never draw breath. I want to do it, she said, her voice gaining strength. I want to adopt a child from the orphan train, more than one if we can manage it. I want to fill this house with the sound of children laughing. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. We will, he promised. We will build the family we are meant to have, whatever that looks like. The weeks leading up to the orphan train's arrival were filled with preparation. Maeve sewed clothing in various sizes, not knowing how old their potential children might be. Lucas repaired furniture and built new bed frames, sturdy and strong. They spoke with other families in the area who had adopted from previous trains, listening to advice and stories with equal measures of excitement and nervousness. Do not expect too much too fast, warned Mrs. Patterson, a rancher's wife who had adopted 2 siblings 3 years prior. These children have been through trauma. They may not trust easily. Give them time and patience and they will come around. What if they do not choose us? Maeve worried to Ruth one afternoon. What if we want a child and they do not want us? Then you will love the next one who does, Ruth said practically. But Maeve, any child would be lucky to have you and Lucas as parents. You will find your children, I am certain of it. The orphan train arrived on a Thursday in late April, pulling into the Dodge City station with a whistle that seemed to summon the entire town. Maeve and Lucas stood among the crowd of prospective parents, their hands clasped tightly together, as children of various ages were helped down from the train cars. They looked exhausted and frightened, these children from the eastern cities, displaced by poverty or tragedy or simple misfortune. A stern-looking woman in a severe black dress addressed the crowd. These children are in need of good Christian homes. If you are interested in adoption, you will need to demonstrate that you can provide for them physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We will conduct interviews and home visits before finalizing any placements. The children will also have a say in their placement. We believe they should have some choice in their futures. The children were led into the town hall, where tables had been set up for meetings. Maeve felt her palms sweating as she and Lucas approached, unsure how this process was supposed to work. Did they choose a child? Did the children choose them? How did anyone make such a monumental decision? A small girl caught Maeve's eye, perhaps 5 years old, with dark hair and enormous brown eyes that seemed to hold far too much sadness for such a young face. She was holding the hand of a boy who looked to be about 8, his expression fierce and protective. When they made eye contact, neither child looked away. Those 2 are siblings, the stern woman explained, following Maeve's gaze. Sophia and Michael. Their parents died in a factory fire in New York. They have been in an orphanage for 6 months. We prefer to keep siblings together when possible. We would like to meet them, Lucas said before Maeve could speak, his voice steady and sure. The woman nodded. They have been reluctant to speak with potential parents. The boy is very protective of his sister, but you are welcome to try. Lucas and Maeve sat down at one of the tables, and after a moment the children were brought over. They sat stiffly, Michael's arm around Sophia's shoulders, both of them looking ready to bolt at any moment. "Hello," Maeve said softly. "My name is Maeve, and this is my husband Lucas. We live on a ranch about 10 miles from here." Michael's eyes narrowed. "We stay together. If you only want Sophie, the answer is no." "We want both of you," Lucas said immediately. "We have plenty of room, and we believe brothers and sisters should stay together. Why do you want to adopt?" Michael asked suspiciously. "Why do you not just have your own kids?" The bluntness of childhood. Maeve took a breath and decided on honesty. "I cannot have children of my own," she said gently. "My body will not let me, but that does not mean we cannot be parents. It just means we become parents a different way. So we would be your only children." Sophia spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. "For now," Maeve said. "We might adopt again in the future if the right situation arose, but yes, you would be our children, our family." "What kind of work would we have to do?" Michael asked, still wary. "Some people just want free labor. That is what the orphanage director said." "There would be chores, of course," Lucas said honestly. "On a ranch, everyone contributes. But they would be reasonable chores, appropriate for your ages. Feeding chickens, gathering eggs, helping in the garden. Michael, you might help me with the horses when you are older if you want to learn. The work would be shared, not a burden placed only on you." "Would we go to school?" Sophia asked, her eyes brightening slightly. "Absolutely," Maeve said firmly. "There is a school in Dodge City. It is a bit of a ride, but you would attend regularly. Education is important." The children looked at each other, having some silent conversation that only siblings could share. Finally, Michael said, "Can we think about it? There are other families here." "Of course," Lucas said, though Maeve could see the disappointment in his eyes. "You take all the time you need." They spent the rest of the day watching Michael and Sophia interact with other families, their hearts sinking as the children seemed to genuinely consider their options. An older couple approached the siblings, farmers with a prosperous spread and grown children who had moved away. They could offer stability, experience, a well-established home. "We cannot compete with that," Maeve whispered to Lucas as they stood outside the town hall, watching through the window. "We are not competing," Lucas said quietly. "We are offering what we have, which is love and a good home. If that is not what they need, then they will find their right family. It might break our hearts, but we will survive it." Just before the meetings concluded for the day, Michael and Sophia approached them on the street. Michael looked uncertain now, less fierce and more like the scared 8-year-old boy he actually was. "Can we see your ranch?" he asked abruptly. "Before we decide." "Of course," Maeve said, hope flaring in her chest. "We can take you tomorrow if that is acceptable to the placement agent." The agent agreed, and the next morning Lucas drove a wagon into town to collect the children. They sat in the back, wide-eyed and silent, as the prairie opened up around them. When they reached the ranch, Lucas gave them a tour while Maeve prepared lunch, pointing out the barn, the chicken coop, the paddock where the horses grazed. "That is Thunder," Lucas said, gesturing to a large roan gelding. "He is my horse, but he is gentle as a kitten. Would you like to pet him?" Michael approached cautiously, reaching out a tentative hand. Thunder lowered his huge head and blew softly against the boy's palm, and Michael's face split into the first genuine smile Maeve had seen from him. Sophia giggled, the sound like music. Inside, Maeve showed them the bedrooms that would be theirs. She had prepared one for each child, wanting them to have their own space, but also placed the beds close to the adjoining wall in case they wanted to be near each other at night. "I made these quilts," she said, running her hand over the colorful fabric. "But if you do not like the patterns, we can make new ones together." Sophia touched the quilt reverently. "No one ever made anything just for me before," she whispered. Over lunch, stew and fresh bread that the children devoured as if they had not eaten in days, they began to ask questions. What time would they wake up? What would they do on Sundays? Could they have a dog? Would they be punished if they made mistakes? Maeve and Lucas answered everything honestly, trying to paint a realistic picture of what life would be like. It would not be easy, they acknowledged. There would be hard work and difficult days. But there would also be laughter and warmth, and the absolute certainty that they were loved and wanted. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Lucas drove them back to town. Before the children climbed down from the wagon, Sophia threw her arms around Maeve's neck. "I want to live with you," she said fiercely. "I want you to be my mother." "I want that too," Michael added quietly, his fierce protectiveness softening into vulnerable hope. "If you really want us, both of us." "We want you more than anything," Maeve said, tears streaming down her face. "We want you so very much." The paperwork took another week to finalize. The placement agent visited the ranch, inspected every room, asked pointed questions about their finances and plans for the children's futures. Lucas answered with calm confidence, producing letters of recommendation from Robert, from the rancher who employed him, from their pastor. Maeve showed her sewing work, evidence that she could contribute to the household income while also being present for the children. Finally, on a bright May morning, Michael and Sophia officially became Michael Turner and Sophia Turner, adopted children of Lucas and Maeve Turner. The children cried when they signed the papers, though whether from happiness or grief for the parents they had lost, Maeve could not tell. Perhaps both. Bringing them home felt like completing a picture that had been missing essential pieces. Sophia claimed her room with delight, arranging and rearranging her few possessions, while Michael explored the ranch with Lucas, asking a million questions about horses and cattle and how everything worked. That first night, as Maeve tucked Sophia into bed, the little girl looked up at her with those enormous dark eyes and asked, "Can I call you Mother?" "I would love that," Maeve said, her voice breaking. "I would be honored." "And can Michael call Mr. Lucas Father if he wants to?" "We will not force anything, but you can call us whatever feels right to you." In the adjoining room she heard Michael's voice, cautious and hopeful. "Would it be all right if I called you Father, or is that not allowed?" "It is absolutely allowed," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "I would be proud to be your father, Michael." Maeve leaned against the wall between the rooms, covering her mouth with her hand to muffle her sobs. These were not tears of grief, but of overwhelming joy, of gratitude for the second chance at motherhood she had never expected to receive. The adjustment period was not without challenges. Sophia had nightmares about the fire that killed her parents, waking the household with her screams. Michael struggled with trust, hoarding food in his room because he could not quite believe that meals would keep coming regularly. Both children were behind in their schooling, having missed months of education while in the orphanage. But slowly, gradually, the wounds began to heal. Maeve held Sophia through the nightmares until they became less frequent, singing soft lullabies her own mother had once sung to her. Lucas patiently reassured Michael that there would always be enough food, that he never needed to hide or hoard, that he was safe now. They hired a tutor to help the children catch up academically, and by the end of summer, both were reading at appropriate levels for their ages. Charlie visited frequently, delighted to have cousins to play with, and the three children became inseparable. Robert remarked that Lucas seemed happier than he had ever seen him, more settled and content. Ruth brought her children over for visits, and Sophia and Michael slowly learned to play without fear, to laugh without waiting for punishment, to simply be children. In July, during a scorching hot afternoon when they were all seeking shade on the porch, Michael asked, "Mother, will you teach me to sew? I saw you mending Father's shirt and I think I should know how. It seems like a useful skill." "Of course," Maeve said, warmth flooding through her at the casual use of mother. "I would love to teach you. Your father already knows some sewing, actually. His mother taught him." "Really?" Michael turned to Lucas with new respect. "You can sew." "I can," Lucas confirmed. "Not as well as your mother, but well enough to mend a torn seam or replace a button. There is no shame in knowing how to care for yourself and your belongings." They spent that afternoon together, all four of them, Lucas teaching Michael the basics of threading a needle while Maeve helped Sophia piece together a simple quilt square. It was ordinary, domestic, perfect. As autumn approached and the prairie grass turned gold again, Maeve realized she had not thought about her losses in weeks. The grief was still there, would always be there in some form, but it no longer defined her. She had become someone new, not despite the pain but because of it, forged into a stronger version of herself through fire and loss, and the choice to keep living. One evening in October, nearly a year after Lucas had first declared his love for her, Maeve found him in the barn checking on a mare that was due to foal soon. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me when I was invisible. For loving me when I could not love myself. For showing me that family does not have to look one specific way. For giving me Michael and Sophia, for building this life with me. For everything." Lucas turned in her embrace, cupping her face in his hands the way he had that snowy day by the creek. "You gave me just as much, Maeve. You gave me a reason to stop drifting, to put down roots, to believe in the future. You gave me a family. You gave me a home." He kissed her then, deep and sweet, and Maeve felt the last broken piece inside her click into place. She was whole again, not the same as before, but whole in a new way. The children found them a few minutes later, interrupting with demands to be included in the embrace, and they all ended up laughing in the barn while the horses looked on with patient tolerance. This was her family, Maeve thought. Not the one she had imagined, but the one she was meant to have. As 1880 approached, bringing with it a new decade and new possibilities, Lucas broached the subject of expanding their family again. "The orphan train will come through again in the spring," he mentioned one evening in February. "I have been wondering if we might consider adopting again. I know Michael and Sophia are settling in well, and I do not want to disrupt that, but there are always children who need homes." "I have been thinking the same thing," Maeve admitted. "Our house could hold more love, I think, and Michael and Sophia might enjoy having younger siblings. Let us see who comes on the train. If there is a child who needs us, we will know." The orphan train arrived in April, and among the children who disembarked was a tiny boy, barely 4 years old, with red hair and freckles and a cough that worried Maeve immediately. The placement agent explained that his name was Thomas, and his mother had died in childbirth, while his father succumbed to pneumonia during the winter. He had no other family, and the orphanage had struggled to care for him because he was frequently sick. "He needs a home with people who can give him extra attention," the agent said. "Somewhere quiet with clean air. The city was making his lungs worse." Maeve and Lucas exchanged glances. The prairie air was about as clean as it got, and they certainly had the time and inclination to provide whatever care the boy needed. When they approached Thomas, He looked up at them with green eyes that reminded Maeve achingly of her late husband, and she felt her heart make the decision before her mind could catch up. "Hello, Thomas," she said gently, kneeling to his level. "My name is Maeve. Would you like to come see our ranch?" The little boy nodded shyly, and when Maeve held out her hand, he took it without hesitation. Michael and Sophia adored him immediately. Sophia took on a mothering role that was precious to witness, while Michael appointed himself as Thomas's protector and guardian. The little boy thrived under the attention and the clean air, his cough gradually improving, his cheeks filling out as Maeve fed him nutritious meals and plenty of milk from their cow. "We have 3 children now," Lucas marveled one night as they watched the children sleep, Thomas curled up in a small bed they had purchased in town. 3 children who needed us, who we needed. How did we get so fortunate? The doctor said I would never bear a living child, Maeve said softly. And he was right. But you said we would build our family another way, and you were right too. This is our family, Lucas. This is exactly what we were meant to be. The years that followed were full and busy in the best possible way. Michael grew tall and strong, becoming his father's shadow, learning everything Lucas could teach him about horses and ranching. Sophia discovered a talent for music when a traveling preacher brought a piano to the church, and Lucas saved for 2 years to buy her one of her own. Thomas's health continued to improve until he was as energetic and mischievous as any other boy his age, though he always held a special place in his heart for Maeve, following her around the house and helping with every task she undertook. In 1883, another orphan train brought them a baby, an infant girl whose mother had died giving birth and whose father had immediately surrendered her to the orphanage, unable to care for her alone. Maeve and Lucas had not been planning to adopt again, but when the placement agent appeared at their door with the tiny bundle and desperate eyes, they could not say no. "Her name is Emma," the agent said. "She is only 6 weeks old." The couple who was supposed to take her changed their minds when they saw how small and fragile she is. "But I remembered you, and I thought maybe you might have room for one more." Maeve took the baby, looking down into her tiny face, and felt the same rush of fierce love she had felt for each of her other children. "We have room," she said. "We always have room." Emma completed their family in a way none of them had anticipated. The older children doted on her, competing for who could make her smile, who could soothe her when she cried. Lucas proved surprisingly adept at handling a baby, pacing the floor with her in the middle of the night when she was fussy, singing off key lullabies that somehow worked. "4 children," he said wonderingly one morning as they watched their family eat breakfast together, the noise and chaos and joy of it all. "We have 4 children, Maeve. 4. The doctor said I would never bear a living child," Maeve repeated, the words that had once been a death sentence now transformed into something else entirely. "He was right about that, but he never said I could not be a mother. He never said we could not have a family." "We built it another way," Lucas said, pulling her close. "Just like I promised we would." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch prospered, and Lucas's reputation as an excellent manager led to an opportunity to purchase the property outright from the aging rancher who owned it. With careful saving and a loan from the bank, they became landowners, their children's inheritance secure. Michael, at 16, was already talking about expanding the operation, about breeding better horses, about building their legacy. Sophia, at 13, taught piano lessons to children in town, saving her earnings for the music conservatory she dreamed of attending. Thomas, at 10, was becoming an accomplished rider, fearless and skilled. And Emma, at 3, was the sunshine of the family, her laughter filling every corner of their home. Charlie, now grown and working as a deputy marshal alongside his father, visited regularly with his new bride, a school teacher named Alice who adored the Turner family and considered Maeve and Lucas to be her own aunt and uncle. Robert had remarried as well, to a widow with 2 children of her own, and family gatherings were loud, chaotic affairs that Maeve treasured. Ruth's children were growing up alongside Maeve's, cousins and friends, and the 2 sisters often sat together watching their families interact, marveling at how much life had changed since that terrible day in Dr. Harrington's office. "I thought you were lost to me," Ruth confessed one afternoon. "After Thomas died, after the last baby, you seemed so hollow, I did not know how to reach you." "I was lost for a while," Maeve admitted, "but Lucas found me, or maybe I found him. Either way, he showed me that there was still a future worth having, still a life worth living. He gave me hope when I had none." "He gave you a family," Ruth corrected gently. "And you gave him one too. You built something beautiful together. It was true." What she and Lucas had created was beautiful, hard-won and precious beyond measure. Their family had been built not from blood but from choice, from love, from the determination to provide home and safety to children who had none. On their 10th wedding anniversary in January of 1889, Lucas surprised Maeve with a trip to town, just the 2 of them, leaving the children in Ruth's capable care. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, a luxury they rarely indulged in, and afterward, Lucas led her to the spot where they had first kissed all those years ago. The creek was frozen now, glittering under the winter stars, and their breath misted in the cold air. Lucas took both her hands in his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "A decade ago, you agreed to marry me," he said. "You took a chance on a cowboy who promised you nothing but love and hard work. Do you regret it?" "Never," Maeve said fiercely. "Not for a single moment. You gave me everything I thought I had lost. You gave me a reason to live when I wanted to give up. You gave me our children, our life, our family. How could I ever regret that?" "The doctor said you would never bear a living child," Lucas said, echoing the words that had shaped their journey. "And you never did. But Maeve, you are the mother of 4 beautiful children. You gave them life, just not in the way anyone expected. You gave them love, security, a future. You gave them everything." "We gave them everything," Maeve corrected. "Together. Just like you promised we would build our family together, another way." Lucas kissed her then, as he had on this same spot a decade earlier, and Maeve felt the same surge of joy, of gratitude, of overwhelming love. They had built something rare and precious, a family forged not from biology but from choice and commitment and the refusal to give up on hope. As they walked back to the hotel, arm in arm, Maeve thought about the girl she had been, broken and grieving and certain her life was over. She thought about the losses that had nearly destroyed her, the grief that had felt insurmountable. And she thought about the cowboy who had looked at her and seen not broken pieces but a woman worth loving, worth fighting for, worth building a future with. The doctor had been right. She had never borne a living child, and that sorrow would always be part of her story. But it was not the end of her story, not even close. The end of her story was still being written, in the laughter of her children, in the strength of her marriage, in the life she and Lucas continued to build together on the Kansas prairie. The years continued to unfold with both challenge and blessing. In 1891, a harsh winter tested their resilience when a blizzard killed several head of cattle and damaged part of the barn. Michael, now 18 and every bit the rancher his father was, worked alongside Lucas to rebuild, while Maeve and the younger children did everything they could to keep the household running. They made it through, as they always did together. Sophia left for music school in St. Louis the following year, the first of their children to venture beyond Kansas. The house felt emptier without her bright presence, but her letters home were full of excitement and accomplishment. She was thriving, pursuing her dreams, and that was all Maeve and Lucas had ever wanted for their children. Thomas, at 12, surprised them all by announcing he wanted to be a doctor. "I remember being sick when I was little," he explained. "And I remember how Mother took care of me, how she made me feel safe even when I felt terrible. I want to do that for other people." Lucas and Maeve looked at each other, pride shining in both their faces. "Then you will be a doctor," Lucas said firmly. "We will make it happen." It would require years of education, significant expense, but they would find a way. They always did. Emma grew into a thoughtful, observant child who loved helping Maeve in the garden and asking endless questions about everything. At 7, she declared she wanted to be a rancher like her father, and Lucas taught her to rope and ride with the same patience he had shown Michael. You ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had been able to have biological children? Lucas asked Maeve one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained throughout their marriage. "Sometimes," Maeve admitted, "but not with regret, just curiosity. I wonder if they would have looked like Thomas or had your eyes or my mother's smile. But then I think about Michael, Sophia, Thomas, and Emma, and I cannot imagine loving any children more than I love them. They are mine in every way that matters." "They are ours," Lucas agreed. "And we are theirs. Biology is just one way to make a family. We proved there are others, equally valid, equally strong." "You proved it," Maeve corrected gently. "When you said we would build our family another way, I did not really believe it was possible, but you did. You believed enough for both of us." "I believed in you," Lucas said simply. "I saw your strength, your capacity for love, and I knew that if we worked together, we could create something beautiful. I was right." As 1895 approached, bringing with it the dawn of a new era, the Turner family had become a cornerstone of their community. Lucas served on the town council, helping to make decisions about Dodge City's future. Maeve organized a women's society that raised funds for the school and helped families in need. Their children were known for being hardworking, kind, and well-educated, a testament to the values their parents had instilled. Michael announced his engagement to a rancher's daughter named Catherine, a sensible young woman who loved the land as much as he did. The wedding was planned for the spring, and Maeve threw herself into preparations with joy, sewing Catherine's wedding dress with the same care she had once put into her own. Sophia came home for the wedding, bringing with her a young musician she had been courting, a pianist named David who looked at her with such adoration that Maeve recognized the expression immediately. She had seen it on Lucas's face for nearly 2 decades now. The wedding was beautiful, held at the ranch under a cloudless April sky, with half the county in attendance. As Maeve watched Michael pledge his life to Catherine, she thought about the journey that had brought them all to this moment. The grief and loss that had once defined her now felt like distant memories, important pieces of her history, but no longer the sum total of her identity. She was Maeve Turner, wife, mother, rancher, seamstress, friend. She was a woman who had survived unimaginable pain and emerged stronger. She was a woman who had learned that there were many ways to build a family, and none were less valid than others. That night, after the guests had departed and the children had finally gone to bed, exhausted from dancing and celebration, Maeve and Lucas stood in the quiet of their bedroom. Lucas wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Our son got married today," he said, wonder in his voice. "Our boy, who came to us scared and protective and so very brave, is starting his own family now. He will be an excellent husband and father," Maeve said confidently. We taught him well. We did, Lucas agreed. We taught all of them well. They know what family means, what love looks like, how to be strong and kind and true. That is our legacy, Maeve. Not just the ranch or the land, but the values we instilled, the love we gave. The doctor said I would never bear a living child, Maeve whispered, the old words feeling different now, less like a condemnation and more like a simple statement of fact. He was right, but I became a mother anyway. We became parents. We built our family another way, just like you promised. And what a family we built, Lucas said, turning her in his arms to face him. What a beautiful, imperfect, wonderful family. He kissed her then, after all these years, still able to make her heart race, still able to make her feel cherished and loved and seen. The journey that had started with grief and loss had led to more happiness than Maeve had ever thought possible. The path had been difficult, marked with pain and struggle, but it had brought her here to this moment, to this man, to this life. The years continued to pass, marked by milestones both large and small. Michael and Catherine welcomed their first child in 1896, a son they named Lucas Thomas Turner, and Maeve held her grandson with tears streaming down her face, awed by the continuing circle of family. Sophia married David in a beautiful ceremony in St. Louis, and Thomas left for medical school in Chicago, determined and focused on his goal. Emma, at 13, was already showing signs of being a formidable rancher, able to outride and outrope boys twice her age. She was fierce and fearless, with a sharp mind for business that reminded Lucas of himself at that age. She's going to run this ranch one day, he predicted. Michael will have his own spread with Catherine, but Emma, she has the vision and the drive to really build something special here. She is only 13, Maeve protested, though she could not deny the truth in Lucas's words. I know, but I see it in her. The way she thinks, the questions she asks, the plans she is already making. She is going to do great things. In 1899, as the 19th century drew to a close, the Turner family gathered at the ranch for a celebration that was part family reunion, part acknowledgement of everything they had built together. Michael and Catherine were there with little Lucas and their new daughter Margaret. Sophia and David came from St. Louis, where Sophia was now teaching at the same conservatory she had attended. Thomas made the journey from Chicago, nearly finished with his medical education. Emma, at 16 and every bit as capable as Lucas had predicted, helped organize everything with the efficiency of someone twice her age. Charlie and Alice came with their 3 children, and Robert, now retired from the marshal's position, arrived with his wife and stepchildren. Ruth and her family joined the gathering, as did what seemed like half of Dodge City, all people whose lives had been touched in some way by Maeve and Lucas Turner. As Maeve looked around at the crowd filling her home and yard, at the children running and playing, at the adults laughing and sharing stories, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This was what family looked like. Not perfect, not without its challenges and sorrows, but real and present and full of love. Lucas found her in the midst of the chaos, slipping his hand into hers with the easy familiarity of nearly 20 years of marriage. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything," Maeve said honestly. "The past, the present, the future, how far we have come, how blessed we are. We built something good, did we not?" Lucas said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "We built something extraordinary," Maeve corrected. "Against all odds, despite every obstacle, we built a family and a life that matters. We took broken things and made them whole. We gave children a home who had none. We created love where there was loss." "The doctor said you would never bear a living child," Lucas said, the words that had become almost a mantra for them over the years. And he was right about that. But he never said you could not be a mother. He never said we could not have a family. He never said we could not build something beautiful together. Then we will build family another way, Maeve quoted back, the words Lucas had spoken all those years ago when he first suggested adoption. You said that to me, do you remember? You said if I could not bear children, we would find another way. And we did. We did, Lucas agreed, looking out at their gathered family with eyes that shone with unshed tears. We found 4 children who needed us, and we loved them as our own. We raised them to be good, strong, capable people. We built a legacy that has nothing to do with biology, and everything to do with choice and commitment and love. As the celebration continued around them, Maeve leaned into her husband's embrace, feeling the solid strength of him, the absolute certainty of his love. The journey that had begun in grief and loss had led to more joy than she had ever imagined possible. The doctor had been right about what her body could not do, but he had been wrong about what that meant for her future. She had become a mother. She had built a family. She had created a life full of purpose and meaning and love. She had done it all not despite her losses, but in many ways because of them, because pain had taught her to appreciate joy, because grief had shown her the value of hope, because loss had made her understand how precious family truly was. The sun set over the Kansas prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and Maeve Turner stood surrounded by the people she loved most in the world, the family she and Lucas had built together through determination and faith, and an unwavering belief in the power of love. The doctor had said she would never bear a living child, and that Cowboy had said they would build family another way. They had kept that promise, exceeded it in ways neither of them could have anticipated. They had taken the broken pieces of their lives and created something beautiful, something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. They had proved that family was not defined by blood or biology, but by choice and commitment and the willingness to open your heart to love in whatever form it came. As darkness fell and the stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss and their wedding vows and every important moment of their life together, Maeve felt at peace. The grief that had once consumed her had transformed into something else, integrated into the fabric of who she was but no longer defining her. She was whole, complete, exactly where she was meant to be. "I love you," she said to Lucas, the words she had spoken thousands of times but which never lost their meaning. "I love you too," he replied, pulling her closer. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after, until the last star falls from the sky, I will love you." Around them, their family continued to celebrate, to laugh, to live, and that was the greatest testament to what Maeve and Lucas had built together. Not just a family, but a legacy of love that would continue through their children and their children's children, spreading outward like ripples in a pond, touching lives they would never know about, making the world just a little bit better because they had chosen love over despair, hope over grief, and family over loneliness. The doctor had been right about one thing. Maeve Johnson Turner had never borne a living child, but she had become a mother anyway, in the way that mattered most, through love and choice and the unwavering commitment to provide a home for children who had none. She and Lucas had built their family another way, and in doing so, they had proved that the human heart was capable of infinite expansion, infinite love, infinite grace. As the night deepened, and the celebration finally wound down, as their children and grandchildren prepared to depart or settle in for the night, Maeve and Lucas stood on their porch one last time, looking out over the land they had made their own. The prairie stretched out before them, endless and beautiful, full of promise and possibility, just as their life together had been. "No regrets?" Lucas asked softly, a question he asked her every year on their anniversary. "Not a single one," Maeve replied, the same answer she always gave and meant it with her whole heart. "Not one." They had built something rare and precious, a family born not from biology but from love, and that family would endure long after they were gone, a testament to what two people could create when they chose hope over despair, love over loss, and perseverance over surrender. The doctor had said she would never bear a living child. The cowboy had said they would build family another way. Together, they had proved that sometimes the most beautiful families were the ones you chose, the ones you built with your own hands and heart, the ones that defied every expectation and exceeded every dream. And as they stood together under the vast Kansas sky, surrounded by the evidence of their love and their choices and their unwavering commitment to each other, and to the children they had made their own, Maeve Turner knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, living exactly the life she was meant to live, loved by exactly the man she was meant to love. The journey had been long and difficult, marked by pain and loss and grief, but it had brought her here to this moment, to this family, to this perfect, imperfect, beautiful life. She had built her family another way, and it was everything.